What is up, fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and I'm joined by a man who was just the third Iraqi-born athlete to ever compete in the UFC octagon when he impressively won. Huh? What are you going to say?
First ever Iraqi to represent Iraq, because a lot of people, I got a lot of arguments, saying that I'm the first ever Iraqi to represent, because when I came to the UFC, they didn't even have the flag. So then no one have ever represented Iraq in the UFC. So I'm proud to be the first ever to represent Iraq in the UFC. I know there's some Iraqis in the UFC, but they never represented Iraq. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I stand corrected. The first ever to represent Iraq when he impressively won his debut in July. Now, this London shoot fighter's talent returns to the UFC on November 28th, looking to move to his record to 14-1. And that man is the one they call the Prince, a.k.a. Amir Albazi. Mr. Prince, sir, thank you for the time before your octagon return.
Yes, thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Now, you had to make your debut on 10 days' notice, which honestly has become kind of really common for a lot of fighters entering the UFC in 2020 because of the pandemic. Everyone says the right things because you want to have that confidence going into the fight, but how difficult was it to do the travel to Abu Dhabi, quarantine, make weight, actually try and prepare and train for this opponent, Malcolm Gordon, in just 10 days? Or did making the weight instead at bantamweight instead of your usual at flyweight kind of make the whole process a lot easier than it could have been?
Yeah, of course. It's not like easy to, do short minutes, like last minute fights. But I believe also like you as a fighter should be ready all the time. It's not an on and off job,
Yeah.
I'm always gonna be ready. If the UFC called me, I should be ready. That's my job. That's my profession. So I don't see that as a big thing. It was more the travel, the quarantine, the COVID testing that was the more unusual part of things I wasn't used to, and that of course affected the weight cut as well. When I took the fight on short, I only had 10 days to cut weight. I really tried to make the weight cut, but in the last literally in the last hours before the weigh-ins, my opponent asked to do a catch weight and bantam. So I was trying to get the weight down because of quarantine, and we couldn't move around. We had a 48-hour quarantine in London, and then another 48-hour in Abu Dhabi. So you can imagine that's 4 days in quarantine. So I tried everything. I was literally jogging forward and back in the balcony and trying to do the best I can in the rooms. But in the end, I got the win. That's the most important part for me, and we're here now.
You've had a well-traveled life, which I actually got to talk to you a good bit about a couple of years ago. Your family fleeing Iraq as a child, then a short stays in Kurdistan, Syria, then going to Sweden for a long time, eventually going on to London and England later in your life. And we talked about you discovering UFC as a young teen, knowing then and there when you saw it on TV, that was what you wanted to do in your life. How massive was it to win so impressively in that octagon, to go through that kind of life journey? Not easy. And we talked a good bit about the difficulties you had in Sweden and when you were younger. See a dream and actually reach that dream, because that's a great example to a lot of young people out there that want to do something like that too.
100% agree. For me, it was just a vision, a thought in the beginning. I remember when I started training in Sweden, it was literally like miles away. My first issue in Sweden was I was too young to compete. That's why I got into jiu-jitsu in the first place. I never liked jiu-jitsu like that. I wanted to do MMA. But they told me, listen, the only thing you can compete in is in jiu-jitsu. In MMA, you need to be 18 to compete in Sweden. So already that was like, I'm like, shit, I need to wait another 5 years just to compete. But I kept my focus. I trained hard. And then it was a lot. Then they took away flyweight division. So I was thinking, I don't even have a chance to get into the UFC. So after 12 years of continuous work to actually be there, felt really, really good, like from just a thought and me actually being there. And the crazy part is, all those years I've been looking at the UFC and thinking about my debut. I thought I'm going to be crazy nervous. When I got there, I literally felt like home. It's the most calm I've been before a fight ever. Like I just
Going
felt
back to
insane.
the idea of the debut, because like I was saying before, there are so many fighters this year that debut in the pandemic. Like a guy like Brandon Royval has had a sick year, all pandemic. And going back to the idea of waiting for this moment, is there disappointment? Like you want to make that debut with the walk, with the fans, clapping hands, the pomp and circumstance of it, the all that kind of stuff. Was there on any level disappointment that you didn't get that extra added atmosphere with the fans? Because UFC events will more than likely have bigger audiences than any other in the world. Was there any disappointment there? It was like, nope, I'm in this octagon, I see Dana White, that's more than enough to to make me excited.
To be honest, what makes me excited is the fight in itself. I'm not like, I know a lot of people say it sounds cliche, but I never done this for the money. Like when I started, people don't understand. There was no money in MMA. There was no Conor McGregor in MMA.
Yep.
10 years back, they were earning shit money,
Yes.
but everyone did it for the love of the sport, and that's why I did. I don't care if there's a crowd. As long as I can throw these hands and, have a fight, I'm always going to be happy, no matter the result. So that's how I see it. And I'm not there for the fame or money. I'm just there to make a legacy, just see how far an immigrant kid from Iraq, how far can he make it?
When you made your debut in July, the pandemic situation in Europe then compared to now was quite different. Here in the US, it's always kind of been bad, up and down, kind of this constant wave. But even in the summer, at that time, it had dissipated on some level here. How has this kind of recent surge, the new spree of restrictions all over Europe, especially where you are in the UK, altered your training? Because you didn't have to really deal with it last time. You kind of just jumped right into it, went to Abu Dhabi. It was a frantic thing. This, you had more of a camp, more time to prepare, but this is your first real pandemic camp, and now it's even tougher these days. How has your camp and your training altered compared to fights before this?
It's a bit different, like there's not like everyone in the gym. Like it's just us pro fighters that train for fights and stuff like in the gym. Okay. But to be honest, it's the same group of people I prepare with. So I haven't really been so much different. The coaches are there. We're still doing, we're doing our session, same amount of session I've done before. So it's not really so much different. This lockdown just helping me focus on only training even more. So that's perfect.
Oh, perfect. Now, you were originally set to face Rulian Paiva, but he fell out of the fight. Instead, you'll face off with a tongue-tying kind of name in Zhalgas Zhumagulov. What are the different challenges this Kazakh fighter brings now compared to Paiva? As well as, how could this change an opponent? Are there some elements of that favor you, that are better than Paiva was in this new opponent?
Of course, there are two different type of opponents. One is a longer, lanky opponent, and the other one is a more shorter, stocky opponent. So I had to change bits up, but I don't. For me, it doesn't really matter. I believe in my fighting so much, and I think I am a championship material, so I should be ready for whatever. Whatever, if it's short, long, strong, weak, if he's a jiu-jitsu guy, as a stand-up guy, a wrestler, I should be able to deal with all of them.
And talking to a lot of fighters over the last bunch of years, the surprise thing I've constantly learned is a lot of them don't really like watching tape. They don't want to think too much about what a guy and his skill sets are, because they feel like it'll kind of short circuit them when they're in the fight. Are you a similar kind of guy in that you're not big too much on watching tape, so a change in opponent isn't too much of a big deal because you just focus on what you have to do, certain elements of their skill set, and that's really the crux of a training camp for you?
Personally, I don't dwell too deep into it. I know some people go in very deep into, the opponent's form of fights. He does this. I have a look as a general of what they do, how they fight, their rhythm. But then my coaches do the job of checking more in on exactly game plan wise and what they do. So I have coaches to deal with that. But I always watch, but I never overthink it. I'm not the person that I focus on what I'm gonna do to the guy rather than what the guy gonna do to me. And so far, it's played out in my favor. So
you can't deny it.
Winning concept.
Fair enough. Now, Zhalgas has fought most of his career for Fight Nights Global, which is a very, very solid, good organization. While you are more well-traveled, fought in Bellator, Brave CF, now UFC experience. Is experience on bigger stages, under brighter lights, what maybe you feel is one of the major advantages for you in this fight against him? Or do you feel it's much more than that, and maybe you're just a higher level of competition than maybe he's encountered before? Like, what do you feel you bring to him that's gonna be something he maybe hasn't seen, or just gonna be a big problem for him on fight night?
I believe I'm better than him everywhere, in every aspect of MMA. And we're going to see that on 28th of November. So I don't think he's going to present too much surprises for me. I'm going to do me and hopefully get out with a 50G bonus this time.